Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a convo. What kicked it off, actually, the topic was talk about a conversation I had with a former work colleague. We used to work in a corporation together, and we still stayed in touch, and he's actually done some work for the business I have a share in. So we know each other reasonably well. Anyway, he's I haven't seen him for probably since early December, I guess. But he was talking about an interview he attended, and talking about interviews generally at the executive level. That whereas when sort of he was moving up through the ranks, and when he achieved some quite senior executive level status, he was used to being interviewed by professionals, people that knew as much as he did or more than he did, were more experienced than him or equally as experienced, qualified, and had the same level, give or take, the same level of achievements that he had, and had the same levels of responsibilities and so on. So people that have had to make it themselves and had done so through merit and through achievement. Now, it doesn't mean, by the way, that you don't get into situations where the boss likes you or doesn't like you, and that can affect things. You do, but merit primarily. And so he was talking about how things have changed. Now, I've never told him about this Tacitus stuff, so he doesn't know. So I was instantly, my antenna sort of shot up, and I wanted to know his view on how he believed things had changed and since the days of merit, and how it was manifesting in his day-to-day sort of work type existence and so on. So he was talking about how degrading and humiliating the interview process is for straight white males that earned their stripes in the days of merit, so he was saying that no one who interviews him is at his level or has achieved the things that he's achieved or has the credentials, if you like, that he has, until maybe he gets to the CEO level. And even then, he's saying that it's becoming increasingly rare that at the CEO level, they're mostly people who are appointed by the big financial firms who say, we want this guy or that guy in there. The board of directors the same. And then it's, but increasingly the VP level people and so on are being given over to affirmative action. So as he explains it, the first person that he may come into contact with is some snot-nosed, little teenage flunky in HR. Now that would never happen, and by my own experience, I can vouch for that. Those sort of things never used to happen, unless you were yourself a junior or a beginner. So in effect, he was saying that everybody's treated as if they're a beginner, like fresh out of high school, fresh out of college, and he said these people talk to him as if he's a child and so on. And the interviews have been conducted by people who have no concept of what the job requires or entails. They just have a vanilla boilerplate of very childish, with the pre-assumption that you're someone who's just left high school or something, or just left college. So he was saying increasingly the people that are doing the interviews are, he can go through where the majority of the people don't even speak English or don't speak it well, they don't speak it as a first language. So he can't really answer their questions in English because they don't quite understand it or the nuance of it. And he said pretty much all of them are so young and or unqualified, like as in they're all affirmative action. Then he can't explain again what his credentials are, because none of these people have any achievements or have had to make decisions or or take responsibilities in their own right. They're all just affirmative action box ticking flunkies. The other side he mentioned, which I would agree with, is the amount of people who effectively hate straight white males. They're in the job of social engineering. They see themselves as not simply employees in the HR department, but as social engineers, diversity and inclusion officers, and this sort of thing. Their job is to prevent straight white males from getting hired if they can at all do it. He also mentioned things like how rigorous the background checks on him are, and how he's got to endure multiple interviews, whereas an affirmative action candidate is waved through on a single interview. And things. So he was talking about the whole thing generally, but he was talking about the degradation of it. When you're being interviewed by person after person or a panel of people who have no idea what your job is. They've got this boilerplate of questions that they don't even barely understand, and they treat you and talk to you as if you're 18 years old and 19 years old doing your first internship or something like that. He said that's humiliating for someone of his status and credentials and achievements, and I agree, it would be quite unpleasant. And we in the business that when we get the same thing in the sense that a lot of the people we have to deal with are woefully unqualified. There are times when everyone we have to interact with at the client level is an affirmative action hire, and none of them are qualified to be doing what they're doing. They're all snot-nosed. They've all been through the university system that says straight white males are all Hitler, and so they're constantly feeling insecure, and they just don't know what they're doing. So I understand that. I know what he means. That for us, the deal's already done. The contract's in place, so we don't have to. We tolerate these people because we have to, and they're part of the gig and getting the job done. But they don't decide. Well, I suppose they could make it difficult for us, but they don't decide whether we get the contract or not. That's decided at a different level. So we don't have to put up with that or endure it. But it sort of got me thinking about white people generally, particularly say white people over the age of late 40s, where they'd still remember at least part of the pre say anyone who finished their high school and college before the year 2000 probably still has some memory and semblance of what constitutes merit, whereas people that did it afterwards probably don't. Certainly the most of the younger people in HR and those sort of things, diversity departments, given their age, they wouldn't remember, or they don't know. They would never have experienced the merit system. And in some organisations, the diversity department has got specialist angry lesbians that have to approve the hiring of any straight white male before they can get the job. That's how insane the times are at the moment. Let me just repeat that some private, traded on the stock market businesses actually have diversity and inclusion departments with angry lesbians in them. And those lesbians must have, like a group of them, a panel of them, must approve the hiring of any straight white male. It's insane. It transcends insanity. Those are the sort of things that are happening at the moment. So I took on, I agree with pretty much all of what he said. So, in the face of these humiliations, when there's another interview, there's another psych test he has to, which assesses his suitability of working with minorities. He also talks about the loaded questions, and we've seen a bit of this as well. The loaded question he gets: do you have any problem with black lesbians? You damn fucking fascist. They don't say that, but the inference is that he would have a problem, and that he's really a closet Nazi, and they're going to winkle that out of him in the interview process. That level of prejudice and so on by ideological fanatics who are totally useless in their own right is obviously going to be difficult for anyone to put up with. unless you're a two-bit affirmative action flunky yourself. So and I was sort of thinking back to, and this is 15 plus years ago, where I was tapped for a gig. It was a decent size sort of multinational firm, not huge, but decent size. And they were starting up a new division, and they were looking for someone to sort of head it up. So it's kind of like a divisional general manager, junior VP type gig, and I think they called it general manager from memory. But anyway, the CEO had asked around, who should I talk to and who can I tap and all this sort of thing, and he'd heard my name in a few places, so I got the call saying, let's do it. Now, first off, I thought he was going to just appoint me. So, that was sort of how I understood it at the outset. But he insisted that I had to go through the process, and he promised it wouldn't be onerous or anything like that. I had a chat to him on the phone, and he was he'd been appointed by the venture capital, effectively a venture capital firm that got a majority share in there, and he'd been appointed by them, and he wasn't qualified to be doing that job, far from it actually. But he was on big bucks. I don't know why, but he was the guy in charge, and he was interested. So, well, he's interested in hiring me, and so at least I should talk to him and see what money they're putting on the table. Now, whenever you get a startup, working in a startup thing like that, you get a high risk because the company doesn't have a clear set of goals about what they want to achieve, what resources they're prepared to put into it, and for how long, what they'll do if the goals that they're looking at aren't met. Given it's all new and everything, it's difficult to establish goals that are achievable or realistic. You can always set financial goals. So we're going to invest, $1 million, so we want to make more than $1 million. But you can do those sort of things. But that's just any accountant in the back room can do that. That doesn't mean anything in terms of getting the business established. Now, maybe the business has a longer gestation before it takes off, maybe a short one. Maybe the resources they've earmarked for it are woefully inadequate, and so on and so forth. Now, it had other attractions like hire your own team and so on. So anyway, he said, "Look, I want you to meet the key people in the organisation," and so he said he arranged for me to meet the executive vice president and the vice president of human resources, and so I sat down with them, and I was horrified. The vice president of human resources was one of these angry. I'm not sure she's a lesbian necessarily, but one of these angry leftists who'd gone as a mature age student to do a gender studies course that included human resources or vice versa, or sociology. And so she'd come out, and the reason that she'd had failed marriages and bad relationships was because of the patriarchy. And so she's absolutely consumed with the idea of Nazis were everywhere and the patriarchy. She probably was one of the earlier people to get caught up in that, but clearly it was front and center of all her reckoning, and she in effect demanded that I prove I was not a Nazi and so on, and that didn't go down well. And she wasn't bright or sophisticated, had achieved nothing in her own life, and I thought, why the fuck would you hire somebody like that into a senior role like that? And she just came across as a snotty little shit bitch from the projects or something like that, and it was all I could do not to get up and walk out. But the executive vice president, he didn't even speak English as a first language, and his English was so poor that I had trouble understanding, and I had to really concentrate really listen and ask him to repeat things. And then I asked him about his credentials. And again, it's hard to imagine somebody as unqualified as that being anything other than a trainee, let alone a fucking executive vice president. So I heard later that he was related to one of the big Asian money banks that was throwing money around, and they had to give him a prestigious, well-paid job to seal the deal and getting the money. I don't know how true that was. He definitely was woefully unqualified. So I looked at that, and I thought, to me it's humiliating, but well, humiliating is probably too strong a word, but to me it's like, why am I sitting here talking to these two people that I wouldn't piss on? I wouldn't hire either of these two people, if my life depended on it. And yet here I'm sitting, and they can decide whether or not I get the job, them, that sort of thing. It's that type of mentality, and I don't know. I mean, do you crawl to them and bow and scrape and smile and to get what you want? Did I really want it? I don't know. It's a high risk gig. If they want to accept me as the professional who can come in and give them guidance and bring my expertise to the table and my credentials, then that's one thing. But to be treated as a supplicant who's on my knees begging for this job that I'm not begging for, that I'm not even sure whether I want or not, but they wanted to have the paradigm of I had to pass some sort of moral test before they would accept me, rather than there was no discussion about credentials, achievements, qualifications, what have you done, or there was nothing about that. It was all focused on you want it bad. I know you do, but you better prove to us you're not a Nazi, that sort of thing. And I thought, nah, I'm not going through that. No, I didn't want to get up and walk out and say you're a bunch of fucking morons. Don't waste my time, because the people that had told this guy, the CEO guy, told him that I was someone worth talking to. I didn't want it to blow back down the line to them, so I'd get up and tell them to fuck off. Then they go back and tell the CEO that, then he says to those guys, "Oh, that guy you told me about, that Billy Bob, he's an arsehole, and guess what he said, and guess what he did." I didn't want that sort of blow back down the line. So I stayed polite and tried to be agreeable and then just quietly walk away from it. Now the HR VP, who again you wouldn't employ to work cutting up sandwiches in a takeout food shop. She was that fucking moronic and useless. I guess she sensed that I wasn't sort of chomping at the bit for the job, and she didn't like that. She wanted to you're desperate for it, aren't you? You're on your knees begging for it, aren't you? So she could just hold it that little bit of distance away, like the carrot to the donkey, and so she's a little bit put out that I wasn't sort of crawling to it to get the gig, nor would she engage in, well, he's a really experienced guy. He really knows his shit. He's got some high achievement. We should be thankful that we can get somebody like him to interview or to work for the company and add value to our business. But instead of that, she saw it as an ideological thing. The guy didn't really speak English, the executive VP. He was kind of too stupid to do anything at all. And again, his English was so bad. So anyway, so she ended the thing with leaning forward in the chair. You have to prove to me you really want the job. But it was said like a teenager again, as I come back to often, teenager playing doll's house games. It was no appreciation of any reality. So I am coming back to the guy, then I understand this. Now I'd be interested in seeing some comments on this. Is it uniquely humiliating only to older straight white men? Because the globalists do want to get rid of us. Like the quicker we die, the happier they're going to be. Or is it something that any straight white male would be irritated and disappointed, assuming they had substantial achievements to their credit? or is it something that young men or gay men or fairy boy man, girly man, that's, would they be, oh, that's okay, I want to be questioned, and I want them to make sure that I'm not a Nazi. Maybe they get off on that. Maybe it's some sort of perverse pleasure they derive from it. Like a character out of a Dostoevsky novel. But anyway, I'd be interested in seeing your comments below, and you've been with Tassus today, and thank you for listening.